Do you like to surprise and make unexpected surprises to your loved ones? I love doing this, but I didn't know that one of these surprises would eventually lead to my divorce. My wife cheated on me. I've been driving for the past 2 hours to the Marriott in Baltimore. My wife was there attending a conference, and my plan was to surprise her by showing up and taking her out to dinner. Yeah, right. For the past 3 months, I've had suspicions that my wife was having an affair with one of her colleagues. I had a gut feeling that every time she went on a business trip, training, or conference, she was actually meeting someone. Tonight, I was going to catch her red-handed and put an end to it. My wife, Megan, and I have been married for 14 years. We have 2 wonderful kids, Sarah, who's 12, and Todd, who's 10. Right now, they're staying with my mom. Megan and I got married right after high school. We dated during the last 2 years, and it seemed like the natural step to get married. She's always been smart and cheerful with long brown hair. She's slender, with sharp, angular features, and not an ounce of fat on her. I always believed we had a strong marriage, until about 3 months ago. It was just small things, nothing concrete I could point to. I was hesitant to confront her, fearing I'd come across as paranoid or jealous. But this conference was close enough for me to show up unexpectedly, and possibly catch her in the act. I carried my garment bag to the front desk. Hi, I'm Phil Jenkins. My wife Megan is here for the insurance conference, staying in room 214. She said I could pick up a key here. After checking the data in the computer, the employee took out the key. May I see your ID card, please? No problem. I'm glad you're asking. I handed him my driver's license. I was on pins and needles as I walked to the elevator. What would I do when I saw her? What would I say? Should I knock or just walk in? Was the door locked? Was she alone? Was she even in the room? As I walked down the hallway, I made a decision. I would just put the key in the keyhole and try to open the door. Whatever happens next, I'll deal with it. I tried to move as quietly as possible. Unlocking the door, I slowly opened it and saw Megan sitting at a table with an open briefcase and working with papers. She turned around and gasped in fright. "Phil, you scared me to death. What the hell are you doing here?" "Hi, honey. I had some free time, so I decided to drop by and invite you out for dinner." "Great. You're staying the night, right? I could use some company." She came over and kissed me hard. Well, it looks like my grand plan to catch my cheating wife has failed miserably. "Do we have time for a quick intimacy before dinner?" I asked hopefully. "Well, I need to take a shower first, but how about a quick entertainment before I jump into bed? And after dinner, we'll have the whole night to do whatever you want." I was glad I was wrong about her cheating. I loved this woman and didn't want to lose her. And she did what she promised. "Well, that's enough for you until the end of dinner," she said. With a wide smile on her face, she turned and went into the bathroom to take a shower. I composed myself and sat on the bed. Megan's toiletry bag was on the dresser, so I went over to check if she had any aspirin to get rid of my headache from the long drive. I didn't find any pills, but in the side pocket of the bag I spotted something unusual. Slowly I pulled out a pack of 6 rubber. I sat on the bed holding them in my hand. After Todd was born, Megan started taking birth control pills. They made her nauseous every time she took them, so we decided I would get a vasectomy. Since then, we hadn't used any birth control. It was great not having to deal with rubber or pills anymore. But now, seeing these in her toiletry bag, I couldn't help but wonder, what the hell are they doing there? I'm not stupid, and it didn't take long to realize that my dear wife was cheating on me. At that moment, I wasn't sure how to react. As I continued searching through her bag, I found a couple of safety pins she kept for clothing emergencies. I took one of the pins and carefully poked a hole through the middle of each rubber. Then, I put everything back, exactly as it was. She was still in the shower, so I grabbed my phone and called a friend at home. "Freddie, it's Phil. I need a favor." "No problem. What do you need?" "Wait about an hour, then call me on my cell and say there's a burst pipe at the school and they need me immediately. You just need to make the call. I'll handle the rest." "Got it. I'll call around 7. Talk to you later, buddy." I decided I didn't want to stay the night with my wife. I already regretted what we'd done, and I didn't want to make things worse. The drive home would give me some time to think. I knew I had to do something, but at that point I wasn't sure what. As Megan stepped out of the shower, it took all my self-control not to confront her. I was burning with anger inside, wanting to hurt this woman, my wife, in some way. I'm not a violent person. I never lose my temper and always try to stay calm in any situation. I also realized it was best not to let her know I was aware of her infidelity. By the time we reached the dining room, I was completely overwhelmed with sadness. "Order whatever you like, dear. I can expense it." "Well, I'm not really that hungry. I think I'll just have the small filet." "That sounds good to me, too. How about a bottle of rosé to go with that?" After the waiter took our order, I couldn't hold back any longer. I had to probe. "Megan, are you happy with how our marriage is going?" "Of course. I have a nice home, 2 wonderful kids, and a husband who loves me. What more could I ask for?" "Oh, I don't know. I just wonder sometimes if I'm doing everything I can to keep you happy. I feel so lucky to have such an amazing woman as my wife. Sometimes I have to pinch myself to believe it's real." "Oh, you silly goose. That's why you drove all the way here to see me." "Well, I don't think you have anything to worry about. I'm happy and content, and you're doing everything right. A woman couldn't ask for a better husband than you." The waiter served our dinners, and we made small talk about trivial things throughout the meal. Just as the plates were being cleared, my phone rang. I excused myself and went into the lobby to avoid disturbing the other diners. After a few minutes, I returned. "That was Freddie. There's a broken water pipe at the school. I really need to get back there as soon as possible. I'm sorry to cut our evening short." Megan's face showed disappointment, though I couldn't tell if it was genuine. It didn't seem to matter to her whether I stayed or left. Either way, she was going to be let down. As we stepped into the elevator, Kirk Langford was getting off. He was the business associate Megan always seemed to travel with. "Oh, hi, Megan. I stopped by your room to see if you wanted to grab dinner," but there was no answer. "I see why now." He extended his hand. "Kirk Langford, and you must be Phil. Megan talks about you all the time. Phil came down for the night, but he has to go back because of an emergency. I guess I'll be sleeping alone again tonight." It was hard to shake his hand and pretend to smile politely. As we rode up in the elevator, I couldn't hold back anymore, and brought up what had been bothering me. "Megan, I really want you to quit your job, and I'd feel better if you weren't working with Kirk. We've talked about this before, and it's important to me. Phil, I told you I have no intention of quitting. I enjoy my work, and I'm learning a lot from Kirk. You need to get over this paranoia about him and me." When we got to the room, Megan gave me a quick kiss before I grabbed my bags and left. On the way home, I couldn't stop thinking about Kirk stopping by Megan's room after his dinner. By the time I got home, I was a wreck. I've started to resent my wife for what she's been putting me through. I wish I was one of those guys who knows all the clever ways to catch their cheating wives. But I was at a complete loss. What could I do about it? I couldn't even think of a way to avoid intimacy with her. I actually wanted to get a divorce, but I didn't have enough hard evidence to justify it. I felt defeated. My wife was cheating on me. I knew it, but there was nothing I could do. I wasn't going to put up with it, but I needed help. 2 days later, Megan returned home, smiling like a schoolgirl. I could tell she had a great time, which only made me even angrier. I looked into her bag and found that there was only one protection left. That night, being intimate with my wife was more of an obligation than any pleasure. On Saturday, there was a picnic of the Globus Insurance Company. At least the kids had something to have fun with. But I wasn't looking forward to this day. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone in the company knew what was going on, and I felt a little stupid. I tried to keep my head down so as not to become the object of rude jokes. Maybe I was being paranoid, but I couldn't help myself. Megan had a great time talking to everyone, especially Kirk. They weren't too touchy, but they were definitely close. I was ignored, which frankly was fine with me. "Hi, I'm Janet Langford. You must be Phil Jenkins." She was stunning, and now I was even more confused. I thought my wife was amazing and I loved her, but Janet Langford looked like she had stepped right out of a pin-up magazine. With her long auburn hair and striking blue eyes, her figure was perfect, even though she was a bit short. Why would Kirk Langford cheat on someone as gorgeous as her? Oh, I'm sorry, I got caught up in my thoughts. Hi, it's a pleasure to meet you. Could we go somewhere quieter to talk? Maybe a place without kids and all this noise. Of course, let's head down by the lake. No one's going to miss me. Same here. We found a couple of nice benches, about 100 yards away from the picnic area, and sat on one overlooking the lake. I'm all ears. What did you want to talk about? Janet hesitated. This is really hard for me. I'm not quite sure how to say it. It's a sensitive topic. At that moment, I knew she was aware of it. I decided to make it easier for her. Are you talking about the affair between Kirk and my wife? I just found out this week. Janet looked relieved. I've known for about 2 months. I'm preparing to have the divorce papers served, but I need a bit of help. I hired a detective to gather evidence, but my lawyer said I'd have a much stronger case if Megan could testify, or at least sign a notarized statement confirming the affair. What kind of evidence do you have? I have photos and recorded phone conversations. I haven't managed to get any videos yet, but the photos are quite clear. I also have specific times and dates. I can try to help. I'm not sure how, but I'll work on it. Do you think your lawyer could assist me with the divorce papers using some of your evidence? I would really appreciate it since I don't have any proof myself. I'm also suing Globus. I have statements showing that some high-level company officials were aware of the affair and did nothing to stop it. They'll have to choose between firing both of them or facing a $1 million lawsuit. Wow, I'm definitely impressed. Kirk is playing golf tomorrow morning. Could you come over to my house around mid-morning? He should be gone until late afternoon. I can show you what I have, and we can figure out what to do next. I live at 206 Hemlock Avenue in Crestmont. Okay, it's a plan. Not really a date, but you know what I mean. We both laughed a little, and I felt comfortable with her. We walked back to the picnic area. No one seemed to have noticed we were gone. I felt a lot better about the situation. Maybe this whole mess could be resolved. I certainly hope so. As I anticipated, Megan told me the next morning that she needed to run some errands and would be out for a couple of hours. Once she left, I took the kids to my mom's house and headed over to Crestmont. Janet greeted me at the door, and we went into the den. There was a comfortable leather couch and a large computer monitor on the table in front of it. The screen displayed an image of an empty motel room. Janet signaled me to sit down. "I have beer, soda, and wine. What would you like?" "Just regular soda. Pepsi, if you have it." "You've got my full attention, Janet. What's this all about?" "Well, in a few minutes, we'll be watching my dear husband play a round of golf, live and in full color. I hope you won't be too upset, but I think you might recognize his caddy." "How on earth did you manage this?" "It cost me $1,400 to set this up. It better be worth it. Of course, Kirk will be covering the expense. I'm guessing the round will last about 2 hours, so make yourself comfortable. I've got popcorn and nachos to keep us entertained. By the way, I'll be getting a DVD of the entire session and will gladly give you a copy." I don't really want to see this, but I wouldn't miss it for anything. Let the show begin. We chatted for about 20 minutes. Janet showed me the evidence she had gathered about the affair. I was astonished by the photos, tapes, and documents she had compiled. I was also devastated because it confirmed what Megan was doing. I was surprised to learn that Janet had 3 large koi ponds in her backyard. I expressed interest in seeing them and asked if I could bring the kids over sometime. She seemed delighted and said she'd love to have them visit. Just then there was some activity on the monitor. As Janet expected, Kirk and Megan entered the room and immediately began to get down to business. There was no small talk, no preliminary kisses, nothing. They just threw off their outerwear and jumped into bed. To my surprise, the video was of excellent quality. I felt a little awkward sitting on the couch with a stranger and watching my wife and her husband cheat on us. "Janet, I'm sorry to interrupt, but do we really need to watch all this?" "I guess that's not what you want to see." "Not really. To be honest, watching my wife with another man is quite uncomfortable, and I feel awkward when you're sitting next to me." "Well, it's all being recorded, and that's what we need for lawyers. We don't have to keep watching this. To be honest, I don't really like it. The plot is quite predictable. Are you going home or what?" "Actually, I was hoping that you would show me your carp ponds. It's much more interesting than watching it for 2 hours in a row." Her eyes lit up at the sight of my interest in her hobby. She stood up readily, and we headed to the back of the house. I couldn't help but think that my day was going to be much more enjoyable than my wife's. The 3 fish ponds were incredible. I was particularly intrigued by the pumping and filtration systems, as I used to be a plumber before starting my job at the school. Kirk was not at all involved in her hobby, so she had to hire people to handle the pipes and pumps. Naturally, I offered to help whenever Kirk was out playing golf. My interest was purely in learning more about the koi ponds, though spending time with Janet was an added benefit. After a few hours, which seemed to pass too quickly, we returned to the house. With the motel room now empty, it was time for me to head home as well. Janet promised to call when Kirk had another golf game, so I could visit with Sarah and Todd. The next few weeks were difficult. Every time Megan took a shower, I looked in her bag and always found a new pack of protective rubber bands. I couldn't figure out how she managed to use them all. I had a pin on my keyring to make holes in them. I expected Megan to have to pay an unplanned visit to her sister any day now. After Kirk's golf game, the children told Megan about their visits to the fishermen, showing her photos of the fish they had painted and the names they had given them. Megan had never shown any interest in or associated Kirk's wife with a carp lover. She seemed relieved that I had distracted the children while she was busy with Kirk. I tried twice more to convince her to quit her job and stop seeing Kirk. I was refused both times, and the second response was particularly harsh. I also started making excuses to avoid intimacy with her, which led to some harsh comments about my masculinity. Although these comments hurt me a little, they also helped me justify my actions. And to be honest, avoiding intimacy with her was a real challenge. Anyway, she was a very beautiful woman and an unattractive figure. Finally, on a Tuesday night, she hit me with the news. "Phil, I've been feeling really stressed out lately. I'd like to take a few days off from work and visit my sister for about a week. Could you watch the kids while I take some time to unwind?" "Hey, I get it. You've been working a lot of overtime and staying up late. I think a break would be good for you. A trip to your sister's is definitely better than spending a year with a therapist. Go ahead and enjoy yourself. I'll handle everything here." I'm glad you understand. All this extra work is for the benefit of the family, but I might have pushed it a bit too far. That night I had trouble sleeping, thinking about everything I needed to do the next day. I was relieved that the time had finally come. Megan's sister, Nancy, and her husband, Brad, lived about 3 hours away. Brad was a decent guy, but he was completely controlled by Nancy. When Nancy said jump, Brad jumped. The town where they lived had 2 termination of pregnancy clinics. I had the names, addresses, and hours of operation for both. I had also reviewed the terms of service at each clinic. Both required a 2-day cooling-off period, meaning the earliest Megan could schedule a procedure would be Friday, assuming her initial appointment was on Wednesday. I figured she would try to get it done as soon as possible so she could recover before coming home. That gave me about a day and a half to finalize my plans. No problem. After Megan left for her rest and recuperation trip, I began to organize things. I had to explain the situation to my parents, and it was tough for me to admit that I had failed as a husband. Nonetheless, they understood and offered their support. The kids enjoyed their time with them, and Dad's truck would be useful for moving Megan's belongings. The lawyer had all the paperwork ready for me to pick up on Thursday morning, and Janet's paperwork was also complete. She planned to serve Kirk at the same time I served Megan. My only dilemma was whether to give Megan one last chance to make things right, though I didn't hold out much hope. Dad and I spent the rest of the day packing Megan's things. On Thursday morning, after a 3-hour drive, I arrived at the first clinic, but it was a disappointment. That left just one more option: the Family Planning Center. I approached the receptionist with as much confidence as I could muster. "Hi, my name is Phil Jenkins. My wife Megan said I needed to come in and sign a consent form." "What kind of form?" "I'm sorry, I don't know the exact name, but it's a form acknowledging that I understand and agree to everything that's happening and that I won't sue or anything like that." "Hold on a moment. That was Megan Jenkins, right?" "Yes. Do you need any identification or anything?" She shook her head no and typed on the computer for a few seconds. "Her sister signed for her, but your signature would be preferable. Please wait while I retrieve the file." Success. Now I just needed to get through the next 2 minutes. She placed the form in front of me and asked me to sign just below Nancy's. I noticed that the actual procedure was scheduled for Friday morning at 11, with a requirement to arrive an hour early. "Do we still owe any money on this?" I asked, pulling out my checkbook and placing it on the counter. "No, your wife paid the entire amount, $800 in cash. There's nothing else due right now." "Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your help. It makes things a lot easier." You wouldn't believe the insincere welcome I received when I showed up at Nancy and Brad's place. It was so fake. It was actually amusing. Megan began, "Phil, this is such a surprise. What are you doing here?" "Well, Mom and Dad offered to take care of the kids for a few days, so I took some sick leave and decided to drop in on you guys. I guess you could say I needed a break as well." The room fell into a sort of silence as I noticed everyone's wheels turning. trying to figure out how to handle the situation I'd put them in. I saw Nancy signal Brad to join her in the kitchen, while Megan engaged in aimless small talk. A few minutes later, Brad re-entered the room. "Phil, I've got a great idea. I can take off work tomorrow and borrow my friend Jack's baseboat. We can leave early and spend the day on the lake, so we won't be in the way of the ladies. What do you think, buddy?" "That sounds fantastic, Brad. A day on the lake will definitely clear my mind. See if Jack can join us." "All right. I'll get everything arranged." Everyone appeared relieved with the new plan. We had a quiet dinner and spent the rest of the evening making small talk. Naturally, there was no intimacy that night, as Megan didn't want her sister overhearing. Early the next morning, Jack was waiting outside with the boat. Brad was busy preparing lunch and stocking the cooler with beer. We chatted while loading the truck and boat. "Are you getting in the truck?" Brad asked as I stood by the passenger side. "No, Brad. I've decided not to go. I suggest you enjoy the day because you might not want to face Nancy for the next few hours." Brad argued with me for about 5 minutes about whether to go or not, until I had to get firm. After using some strong language and making a few physical threats, Jack and Brad finally left. I walked into the house and poured myself a cup of coffee. I located Nancy's cell phone and turned it off. Then I picked up the landline and called my dad. He's always up early. Dad and I chatted for about 2 hours, with the call waiting tone chiming in about 6 times during our conversation. Brad must have been trying to reach Nancy for a couple of hours before giving up. When I heard Nancy and Megan getting up, I said goodbye to my dad and prepared for the day. I cleared the missed calls from the landline and turned Nancy's cell phone back on. In less than 2 hours, Megan and Nancy needed to be at the family planning center. I was about to face 2 very annoyed women. I finished the first pot of coffee, so I brewed a new one for my wife and her sister. "Phil, what the heck are you doing here?" Megan exclaimed. "I didn't feel like going fishing, so I thought I'd hang out with you guys today. I figured we could go somewhere nice for lunch together. I need to head back tonight, so I didn't want to spend the whole day with Brad and Jack on a smelly boat." No, that won't work. Nancy and I have plans for today. We'd prefer to go out by ourselves. I can go out with you any time, but I only see Nancy a few times a year." "Come on, Megan. You'll be here all week. I think you can spare me at least half a day since I drove all the way down here. You've got the whole rest of the week to do your sisterly things with Nancy." Nancy grabbed her cell phone and left the room, pressing the speed dial as she went. Megan sat slouched in the kitchen chair, looking as if she had just been hit by a truck. We could hear Nancy yelling at Brad on the phone, as though he had committed an enormous crime. I felt sorry for him, but he chose to marry her. "Phil, I don't want to be rude, but Nancy and I really prefer that you don't come along today. We have our entire day planned, and it doesn't include you." "All right, tell me what you have planned, and I'll decide if I want to join. If I don't like it, I'll find something else to do." "I still don't get why, since you're here all week and I only have today. You're not meeting up with a couple of guys, are you?" "No, damn it, we're not meeting any guys. We just want to buy some intimate items. Underwear. They're things we'd rather try on without you guys around, gawking. Most of those stores are in the mall, and I can easily find something else to do while you're in the dressing rooms. I'll just tag along and stay out of your way. You don't have to worry about entertaining me. When lunch comes around, I'll take you somewhere nice to make up for the trouble." Nancy stood in the doorway, glaring at me in silence. Megan saw that reasoning with me was futile and seemed ready to give up. They were still in their housecoats. Finally, Megan stood up. "I need to get dressed." As she left, Nancy shot me a look. "You're a real dipshit, you know that?" A big grin spread across my face as she followed Megan upstairs. About 20 minutes later, the landline phone's light blinked on. Someone upstairs was making a call. Time was ticking. We had an hour to get to the center. I was trying to decide my next move. If they tried to leave without me, I'd follow and make sure they knew it. I didn't think they would, though. 20 minutes later, both of them came downstairs. "All right, Phil, let's go shopping," Megan said with a hint of attitude. It turned out to be easier than I expected. The call upstairs must have been to the family planning center, probably to reschedule the appointment. Since I mentioned I was leaving that night, they likely thought the best way to handle it was to wait until I was gone. I wasn't trying to prevent Megan from having the termination of pregnancy, but I wanted to make it more challenging for her. I insisted on driving my own car because I wanted to be in control and didn't want them leaving me stranded. A few miles from home, I stopped at a service station to fill up the tank, check the oil and water, and clean the windshield. It was the longest I'd ever spent maintaining my car. Meanwhile, they just sat there, clearly frustrated. When we reached the mall, I parked far from the entrance to give us a good walk. Once inside, I pretty much left them to their own devices. I kept an eye on them, but didn't really care what they were up to or what they were buying. They didn't seem to enjoy themselves much, spending most of their time talking and making gestures. They bought a few items just to show they had been shopping. I tried to stay out of sight while still keeping them in view. There was clearly some serious conversation going on. The appointment time came and went, and I had managed to postpone the inevitable. I knew she would still go through with the procedure, so I had no intention of interfering any further. After noon, they returned to the mall's center court where I had said I'd meet them. We went to Olive Garden for lunch and got back to the house around 2 p.m. There wasn't much conversation during lunch or on the drive home. I was smiling to myself the whole time, knowing that they were currently annoyed with me, which felt pretty great. I grabbed a beer and relaxed on the sofa. Brad eventually came home, and for about 30 minutes, Nancy verbally attacked him. He managed to slip out the door and was gone for a couple of hours before returning by dinner time. After the girls had finished cleaning up, I asked Brad and Nancy if Megan and I could have a private conversation in the kitchen. Nancy gave me one of her characteristic sneers, and they both went into the living room. Megan was still upset with me over what had happened that day, and I could tell she wasn't going to be easy to deal with. "Megan, I need to ask you one more time. Will you please quit your job and stop seeing Kirk Langford?" Her teeth clenched tightly, and she struggled to keep from hitting me. "Damn it, I don't want to hear this crap again. I'm tired of you bringing it up all the time, and I refuse to waste any more time answering you. You know the answer. It's the same as it's always been, and it's not going to change. Either find a new topic or get out." I reached into the manila envelope I had by the chair and pulled out a legal-sized envelope. "I've asked you at least 10 times in the past 2 months, and each time you've refused to comply with my request. I had no other choice. Megan, these are divorce papers. All you need to do is sign them and mail them. There's a self-addressed stamped envelope included. If you want a lawyer to review them, feel free." She glared at me and leaned across the table. "You stupid son of a bitch. You can't divorce me just because I don't want to quit my job or change my friends. If you want a divorce, you need grounds, and you don't have any. I think it's time for you to go home and get your act together. I am your wife, and I have no intention of giving up my home and family just because you don't like where I work. Megan, why did you come to visit your sister this week?" "That's a sarcastic question. You know the reason. We talked about it before I came." "That's a lie, and you know it. What's the real reason?" "Why don't you figure it out, you know-it-all jerk?" "Megan, why did you and Nancy visit the family planning center on Wednesday?" The room fell silent. My wife started to fidget in her chair, her earlier bravado slipping away. "I don't know what you're talking about." I leaned in closer and asked quietly, "Why did you give the family planning center $800 in cash?" She didn't respond. Though she was looking my way, her gaze seemed distant. It was clear she was now uncomfortable, swallowing as if something unpleasant was in her mouth. Why did you have an appointment at the Family Planning Center at 11 this morning? What exactly were they going to do for the $800 you gave them? Damn it! Stop harassing me about something you know nothing about. It's none of your business why I was there or what I was doing. Her anger flared up again. Megan, the Family Planning Center performs termination of pregnancies. You know it, I know it, and everyone in this town knows it. Since I had my procedure done for your convenience, why would you need a termination of pregnancy? Maybe your procedure wasn't as effective as you thought. Maybe you should get yourself checked. I reached for the envelope lying next to my chair. Here are 3 laboratory reports. 2 months ago, a month ago, and last week. I shoot blanks, and I have documents confirming this. Do you want to show me the report from the Family Planning Center that says you're not pregnant? You're such a jerk, but even that is not enough to justify a divorce. Why don't you just admit that you've been having an affair with Kirk Langford for the last 6 months? We both know what's going on, but you still won't admit it. You have no proof that I had an affair with anyone else besides you. I don't want to sit here anymore and listen to you rant about something that never happened. So you've never slept with Kirk Langford? No. I am your wife, and I have always been only with you. Then how did you get pregnant? She bit her lip hard. She didn't have a chance to answer that question without giving herself away. I reached into the envelope again and pulled out a stack of photos. I posted 6 pictures of Megan with Kirk. Did you sleep with him? There was silence as I laid out a few more photos of them on the table. When I put some more photos on the table, she started screaming, "Stop it, just stop it." Okay, good. I understand you were spying on me. You're a sneaky jerk, do you know that? If you knew something was going on, why didn't you stop it like a man? No, you're just sneaking around and taking pictures like some kind of pervert. I'm sick of your pathetic whining. Just then, my cell phone rang. Hey, Dad. Okay, 10 minutes works. Thanks for calling. As I ended the call, she immediately asked, "What was that about?" My dad is bringing your things here to Nancy's place. He'll be here in about 10 minutes. The locks have been changed at the house. If there's anything we forgot to pack, let me know and I'll get it to you. She sat in silence, not saying a word. Here's the title to your car. I've signed it over to you. In this envelope is half of the money from our bank accounts, about $1,200. I've arranged for you to have visitation rights with the kids once a week. I'm also open to allowing an overnight visit once a month, provided you're willing to make a notarized statement admitting to the affair. Oh, and by the way, I have a DVD I didn't get the chance to show you. It's from the May 10th visit you and Kirk made to the Scandia Motel. It's 2 hours long and shows everything you two did together, as seen in these pictures. I picked up the photos and added, I didn't take any of these. I wasn't really interested in what you were doing. I just didn't appreciate being played for a fool. Lastly, I'd like you to have this keepsake of our love. I took the safety pin off my keychain and slid it across the table. What the hell is this? I've been making little holes in all your rubber bands with this pin for the last 2 months. Did you know that you've used 48 rubber bands in just the last 2 weeks? Old Kirk was more active than I could have imagined. He's a lucky guy. You pathetic jerk. That's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. You're really quite the type. No, honey, the most disgusting thing is sleeping with a man you're not married to. I may be a jerk, but you're a real cheater here. Anyway, I have to go. Dad's driving up to the house. Oh, and just in case you missed it, you still haven't apologized for what you did. I don't think you deserve to marry me. Goodbye, Megan, and good luck at the hospital on Monday. Eventually, when I left the room, she started crying. Nancy rushed to comfort her, and Brad followed me onto the porch. What the hell are you doing, man? Brad said, grabbing my hand. You have been married for 14 years. You can't just give it up because of a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Brad, why did my wife come to visit you and Nancy? He looked down at his feet for a few seconds as if he was thinking. I'm sorry, Phil. Let me help you unload the truck. We had the truck unloaded in about 10 minutes. Megan was crying in the kitchen the entire time. I had no idea why, and honestly, I didn't care. The following week, both Kirk and Megan were fired from Globus. Megan refused to sign an affidavit, but the lawyer said his case was strong enough without it. After that night, I never heard from my loving wife again. She didn't come to see the kids, though they didn't seem to care much, as they were growing close to Janet. We spent a lot of time together as a family. There was no intimacy or even talk about it, since we didn't want to do anything that could jeopardize the divorces. The kids and I were learning a lot about Coy and having a great time together. Finally, after 4 months, both divorces were finalized. Megan didn't put up a fight, but Kirk went down kicking and screaming. He lost the house, all the investments, and ended up having to pay a hefty monthly alimony. A few days before Christmas, Megan came over with gifts for the kids. I remained courteous and didn't do anything to spoil the holiday atmosphere. She stayed for about 2 hours and left as quietly as she had arrived. We didn't discuss the divorce or the affair. I put the house on the market, and 2 months later, we moved in with Janet. Kirk accepted a job in Omaha, and Megan went with him. 4 months later, Kirk vanished without telling her where he was going. Megan moved back in with Nancy after Brad left for a job on the Alaskan pipeline. 2 months later, Nancy received divorce papers in the mail. I imagine the two sisters are good company for each other. Janet and I are content together. She loves the kids, and they feel the same about her. We're planning to get married in June, and are spending every moment we can preparing for the honeymoon.